Hey, ladies and gents, and welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry, episode 232. As always, I'm your host, Jerrad Wyche, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Dominic Orlando.
Who is still praising the sun.
Still praising the sun as always. And we have our co-host that's here whenever he can be, a friend of the show. He's been on numerous times. You should know him by now. Chris Nunes. How's it going, Chris?
Great. I'm putting on my Giants gear. I think I might be able to start for the team this week.
Yeah, for you NFL fans out there, the Giants are dealing with quite a number of injuries. That message you sent was really funny. You're like, oh, maybe I can suit up this week. Who knows? By this point, they might be having those roll calls like Philadelphia did, trying to find somebody to play.
Right.
Not a whole lot of game news this week. I definitely wanted Chris to be on this week because last week's episode, Dom talked about his initial impressions for Far Cry 6, and in our group chat, you had been talking about playing it as well, Chris. So I figured this week, bring you on, and both of you can kind of have a chat about the good, the bad, the in-between of playing that game. Since I haven't had a chance to touch it yet, I thought it'd be a nice little conversation, not a niece. I was trying to say nice and neat at the same time, between you two later on in the show. But before we get to that, let's get to some Quickie news here in the rundown. So first up, delay time. Got a couple of game delay announcements this past week. One hurts more than the other, but Elder Scrolls. Jesus, I'm all over the place today. Elden Ring. I even wrote Elder Scrolls by accident on the thing. Elden Ring was delayed, unfortunately. Only a month. It got delayed to February 25th of 2022. Likely bug fixes and that type of stuff. I'll eat crow on this, Dom. On a previous show, I said there's no way in hell this gets delayed. From Software doesn't delay their games, and they typically don't. They don't. Once they have a release date, they don't. But obviously, we're in this new COVID world, and a month isn't that big of a delay. Obviously, people are talking about now that it's getting delayed into the busiest month of the year for 2022 so far. How did this delay hit you, Dom?
It's a bummer, but like you said, like 1 month is it's sort of odd at this point. Usually you get like the month delay a month or two before it was about to come out. Not, what are we at, like 4 months out. So it feels weird, but it'll be okay. It's now a month off my birthday when it was previously going to come out, which is sort of a bummer. And then now it's like back to back with Horizon, which is bad for Horizon in my case. So
well, who knows? Horizon might get delayed again too. You never know.
True.
Hopefully it doesn't,
fact,
but you never know.
I'd count on it. Actually, that's a good point.
And I don't know if this is. I'm pretty sure this one's being published by Bandai Namco as well, right? It's a usual publishing because obviously Sekiro was Activision. All right. The other delay here, I don't know if you have any interest in it, Chris, but it's always nice to get these December game releases because it's like an early Christmas present, right? We're gonna get Halo this year, which is great. Yep. But there was another game coming out in December that I was excited about, and I think a lot of people were because it was a series returning for the first time in a while, and that was Advance Wars 1+2. Which were the HD remakes that are going to be coming out at the beginning of December. We heard this morning it's going to be delayed to spring 2022, which is a little bit more worrisome of a delay because at least Elden Ring, you got a specific date. This one's moving from a specific date to a window. What do you think about this delay in general, and were you interested in this game at all?
I wasn't interested in the game, but spacing it out, especially in December when Halo's coming in hot, I think is good for any game if they feel like they need a little bit more space and a little bit more time. It's like the same thing with Elden Ring and Horizon coming in, and then that like there are 4 or 5 games in that space that could easily just get bumped and move out just because, you have 2 heavy hitters. So if I was somebody in the December area, I would totally back away from Halo, period. Like I'd walk away from it just because the game is free and it's through Game Pass and it just makes the most sense.
Yeah, and something like Advance Wars, right? I think they're going to have that built-in sales audience no matter where it releases, the people who are either feeling nostalgia or secondary nostalgia of hearing people talk about the franchise. And I do think you want to pivot and move it to a place where you can see those extra sales from the people that are those decision makers of, oh, well, there's this other game coming out close to it. It could use the versatility there because they kind of already have that baked in sales number of who they expect to buy it. And it's kind of good to, delay it to a place in which they can see the utmost success for it. So who knows? We'll see.
I think it's kind of 50-50 because when you move out of December, this is a holiday season, into January where people are way tighter with their wallets. So it's kind of
Remember,
like 50-50.
it's spring 2022, so it's like could be any of a number of months, right? So it's not just to January; it could be wherever.
Sure.
So
Maybe like April.
yeah, exactly. But it is a bummer. The Elden Ring one is a little bit more of a bummer just because like you have to wait even longer. And as somebody who wants to get around to playing the first Horizon before the second one comes out, I hope they don't release next to each other because I'm going to choose Elden Ring. You know what I mean? That's a priority.
We have to.
Exactly.
We do.
We've got to see gameplay of Elden Ring here in December at the Game Awards.
Oh, the
right?
Game
Like,
Awards,
I mean,
yeah,
we
for sure.
have to. Like, because at this point we're like less than 5 months out, and we really haven't seen very much of the game itself.
Well, and there's
Yeah,
something
just
we're going to talk about
short
later where it
snippets.
could also pop up outside of the Game Awards, but we'll get to that shortly. But
Okay.
with the Game Awards, From Software has a pretty good relationship with Jeff. Hidetaka Miyazaki doesn't show up almost anywhere ever to do anything. He's just not that type of personality. And the fact that he was there to accept the award for Sekiro's Game of the Year was huge in and of itself. Not only did the game win, but the fact that Miyazaki was there is kind of a big deal that people don't talk about because that guy's kind of like a hermit, kind of just sticks to being at the studio and working on things. He's not one to acknowledge recognition, which is obviously a cultural thing for Japan, but specifically for him too. He's just not that type of person. And then we saw Sekiro was initially revealed at the Game Awards. If you guys remember, there was that teaser, right, of the arm, and we're like, what the heck is that? So there is a relationship there. Next up, this is something that I came across. This isn't news per se. This is just information I learned about today. So Wolverine, which was the upcoming PS5 exclusive game that was revealed that's going to be developed by Insomniac Games, which I don't understand where they find the time to do all this stuff. The lead writer from Spec Ops: The Line, Walt Williams, which if you haven't played Spec Ops: The Line, I don't want to spoil it for anybody out there. One of the best, not only FPS campaigns out there, but video game campaigns in general. It's a really good story. He's the story lead on the Wolverine game at Insomniac,
That's awesome.
which is really dope. And that gives me more confidence in that because we already know from the development side that Insomniac's going to nail the quality of Wolverine. And now that we have a writer who has a track record, I'm super stoked. Obviously, if you are unfamiliar with Walt Williams, outside of Spec Ops: The Line, he's written a couple of books. I think one's called, is it Subsequent Zero?
Yep.
Yeah.
On my shelf. He also did Battlefront 2, right?
Yes, that's what I was
yes.
just confirming because I thought that too. But yeah, he did.
That was a co-op writing thing with Mitch Dyer, formerly of IGN, who's worked on a number of EA Motive and EA games as well. So yeah, this is dope. I don't know how you guys feel about Spec Ops: The Line or Walt Williams. I guess we'll start with you, Dom. How does this entice you in terms of the Wolverine coming out?
Good. I didn't ever play Spec Ops, so I believe you. I trust you. But otherwise, I don't know for myself.
Thank you.
The Battlefront 2 campaign, though, I really dug from a story perspective. Especially gameplay-wise, it was, not the most engaging for an FPS, but story-wise, I thought it was great. It did some cool stuff. So he's got a lot of good credits. So yeah, this is cool because I'm not super big into the MCU in general, or just Marvel in general, I guess. But I did watch Logan and really liked that movie. So it's good to hear that for this Wolverine game that we have some heavy hitters doing the writing.
Well, and Wolverine has a pretty good lineage in terms of, maybe not a lineage, but the last major Wolverine game that came out, Wolverine Origins, the video game version of the movie, the licensed game, was actually pretty good. Much better than the movie. So it's good to see. Hopefully we'll tackle back-to-back good Wolverine games. Chris, where do you stand on this? Did you manage to play Spec Ops: The Line? Are you familiar with it? And how do you feel about heading into a Wolverine game after we've gotten Spider-Man and Ratchet and Insomniac is just continuing to deliver?
I did play Spec Ops, and I also read his book and how he changed the entire story of Spec Ops: The Line as a big middle finger. So I thought that was really super interesting. I was on the other end of the Battlefront 2 storyline. I didn't really care for it very much. I just thought it was kind of, maybe it was just because he wasn't given a lot to work with.
You think that was a
And
scope thing, right?
Yeah,
With EA
because
being like, you have to make a smaller story so it fits into the, sorry.
that and Star Wars is so specific. Like everything
yeah.
has to be checked. So like I feel like maybe Marvel is a little more not hands off, but like we trust you type thing. You know what I mean? Like we know where you're coming from. We trust Insomniac. I mean, obviously he's gonna have to vet stuff, but like maybe not quite as much as Star Wars because fans get rabid over that kind of thing. So he's also really big into comics and that sort of thing. So I have a feeling he's just gonna run with it, which is kind of cool.
Man,
What?
that's so much my complaints lately because everything they're trying to do with Star Wars, like they are very strict with their canon. They won't do anything outside of it, which is incredibly limiting. So yeah, even when you get the best writers, there's just when you have those arbitrary limitations, there's only so much you can do, and especially it's like a shorter FPS campaign for Battlefront, like then you're really kind of hamstrung. But that's why that's why I feel like a big part of the reason Marvel's Spider-Man on PS4 was so successful because they didn't stick to the MCU. Like imagine if that had to fit in, like I can't imagine it would have been weird. It would have been.
I mean, being told
totally
that you
different
have to
thing.
bring all those callbacks in, like you have to have Han Solo, you have to have Luke Skywalker, like
Right.
You're basically
Shit like that.
okay, well, how do I do that, and how do I make it interesting? So, like to your point, like you're hamstrung by all of the canon itself.
Well,
And so for Wolverine, we know that that's going to be like Insomniac Spider-Man, right? Where it's not related to the MCU. It's kind of its own thing as far as I think.
yeah,
assume
well, and
that's the case.
to your point, Dom, it's not even that Marvel Spider-Man didn't tie into the MCU. It didn't tie into the tropes of a first initial Spider-Man game, right? The main villain wasn't Green Goblin. It wasn't the same thing over that we expected. The fact that Miles was included was great. I mean, for people unfamiliar with the comics, real quick, so the MCU, right? Guardians of the Galaxy came out. Now it's a household name. Everyone loves the Guardians of the Galaxy. Before that film, Guardians of the Galaxy was like a C to D tier comic book. Like no one really read Guardians. It was just whatever. To call it the B team or C team was bad towards actual B and C teams. And with Marvel Spider-Man, Mr. Negative was that. Like obviously Spider-Man, like Batman, is known for his rogue lineup of villains. And Mr. Negative was never mentioned. And the fact that they were able to put him as the main antagonist in that game shows you that Marvel is a little bit looser with the structure of who they want to be in the game. And it seems like they're more open to that in general. Even with Marvel's Avengers, as maligned as that game is, they did some unique stuff that you typically would think that somebody like Marvel would be like, no, you need to do this specifically or this specifically. So I think they're in a good place in terms of licensing their properties and letting people run with it. And going back to Star Wars, I think that's why people were so open to Visions that recently came out that are all non-canon, but it's these animation studios that got to do whatever they wanted. And I believe one of the episodes, I haven't yet to watch the show yet. It's definitely on my backlog. I want to get to it. One of the episodes was like a backdoor pilot, and they're turning that into an actual show now. The Eighth Jedi, I think, something like that is the name I've heard mentioned. Obviously, like I said, I have no reference because I haven't watched the show yet, but it is. Licensing is great because we get to see more stories with the things we love, but to both of your points, it's kind of like handcuffs as well because it's like, well, depending on how tough and narrowed down the vision is from the people up top, you kind of get limited in your storytelling. And with Battlefront 2, no matter where you fall on it, if you liked it or disliked it, I think that suffered from scope and budget in terms of EA being like, okay, we'll let you guys do a single player campaign, but it has to fit into all of these little boxes, right? And it just does seem like they were maybe hampered by that, of all the logistics around it. So exciting stuff. Walt Williams, funny enough, follows me on Twitter. I don't know why, if I'm being completely honest. But yeah, he follows me, which is cool. Very, it's one of those times I could be like, oh, somebody famous follows me, as if it matters at all. But yeah, very weird. Next up, earlier, Chris, you talked about how we need to see gameplay for Elden Ring. It's coming up so soon. We got the announcement of a state of play coming up. So this is going to be happening on October 27th. And quote, the show will be around 20 minutes long and will focus on upcoming third-party releases headed to PS5 and PS4. Obviously, there was jokes on the internet of like, oh, I can't wait for this Deathloop recap, this 20-minute Deathloop recap, because, Deathloop was showing up everywhere for PlayStation. But this is a place where we can see Elden Ring. Obviously, the focus on third-party releases. I'm assuming it's going to focus mainly on games coming out the rest of the year, so we'll probably see Call of Duty Vanguard again here, is my assumption. in terms of other big releases, this is a day after Guardians, so I don't know if we'd see Guardians. I don't even know if Guardians. Do either of you know who has the Guardians marketing? Is it Xbox or is it PlayStation? I haven't caught any of the TV commercials, so I have no idea.
No idea.
I've seen the commercials, but I don't remember who's at the back end of it.
Yeah, they paid all that money for you to remember, Chris.
Yeah,
You
I
gotta
know.
remember. Yeah, so this is pretty cool. I don't know if we're going to see anything crazy. The big thing here is people want to see Final Fantasy 16. That's like the big hullabaloo is they want to see that here. I guess we'll start with you, Chris. In terms of third-party releases heading to PS5 and PS4, as this mentioned, which one do you think is most likely and which one do you want to personally see the most?
Gosh, I mean, I guess I'd say Final Fantasy because that's probably going to be the most tied. But honestly, like there isn't a whole lot coming out at this back end of the year. Like I'm not really sure what their plans are for 20 minutes. I mean, maybe there's a PSVR title that we haven't heard about or know about yet. Like maybe that could be something that comes out that would be interesting to people. But I can't imagine they're going to say anything more than up till December 31st, and they're going to call it right there because anything more than that leads into Horizon and stuff, and they're not going to want to have that conversation.
Yeah, and to clarify, the words I said where it's like 20 minutes focusing on third party, that isn't like assumption. That's literally from PlayStation.
Awesome.
So that's exactly, they want to, set expectations correctly. How do you feel, Dom, about your expectations going into this and what we will most likely see?
They're low for me. I mean, Elden Ring would be incredible, right? I'd like to see more of that, but, I'm not counting on it in the slightest. I think that's reserved for Game Awards stuff, most likely, if at all this year. I guess it's possible too, like, maybe by December or January, it could be that late where we get like a bigger blowout of previews and stuff for Elden Ring. But Final Fantasy would be cool. I don't know if I'd expect it. It's another Square game, Forspoken. I'm pretty sure that's like it's an exclusive for PlayStation, but it's still a third party, so that might be something.
True. See more of that.
Because that's, I want to say, a spring game, or at least a 2022 game, I think. And we've not seen too much. But it was just their last showcase. I think we saw some of it, so maybe that wouldn't be two in a row kind of a thing.
What about like a fighting game? Like what's that indie fighting game that's going to be coming out in early spring?
Sifu or whatever?
Sifu? Like maybe that pops up?
I have
Definitely
two. I have two possible candidates. So Ubisoft, right? The day after this comes out, Riders Republic comes out on the 28th. So we could totally see Riders Republic in this presentation. And Rainbow Six Extraction, which was formerly obviously Rainbow Six Quarantine, which was supposed to come out this fall and got delayed to January. So Ubisoft can make an appearance in some capacity as well.
Splinter Cell, right?
But I don't think
If we
Splinter
believe
Cell is the
everyone.
type of third-party announcement where that would be like in an actual showcase. Like this doesn't seem like somewhere where we're going to see breaking announcements, right? Of like, oh my God, I can't believe this was here. This seems like a follow-up state of play where like, about this game, let us show you more type of deal. We'll probably have some sort of indie game like mashup, right? Where it's a collage of a bunch of different indie titles. Who knows? We'll see. I like that they set expectations.
Time for a Far Cry 6 2 DLC, like the initial, or at least the first drop.
Oh, for the Villains DLC,
Yeah,
right?
for that Villains DLC. Yep.
Yeah, that could totally happen as well.
In that case, I do remember that Xbox always comes up at the end of those Far Cry commercials. So maybe it could still be at the PlayStation showcase, but I wouldn't count on it for that reason.
Well, and with Elden Ring, last time we saw Elden Ring, they had a partnership with Xbox too. Who knows? Like a lot of the stuff is weird. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm glad they set expectations correctly because even the whole vibe of it is like, hey, come check out some updates on some third-party games. I doubt we see a groundbreaking announcement here. Not to say there won't be a game revealed, but I don't think it's going to be the level of like a Splinter Cell or something that'll blow minds.
That Hogwarts thing.
A Hogwarts Legacy. Yeah, that thing needs to get on a positive PR train, so you never, who knows, distance itself as far away from JK as possible. Next up, we got a new studio drop. EA is opening a new studio in Seattle. It's led by former creative director at Bungie and co-creator of Halo, Marcus Leto. The studio will reportedly, quote, focus on developing first-person games and will report directly to Vince Zampella's organization. Pretty cool. Not a whole lot of news here. New studio in Seattle, which is... obviously it's a mecca for game development. Marcus Leto, I'm not too familiar with, but he worked at Bungie, so he has familiarity with Destiny, and he obviously co-created Halo. Focusing on first-person games, not surprising. Reporting directly to Vince Zampella, what do you take that as, Dom, exactly? Obviously, in the structure of like EA, right, with Zampella's success under EA now as a part of Respawn.
I guess that's good because like everything we've seen from Respawn has been good lately. I mean, and even for me, like I really dug Fallen Order. So, and obviously Apex is a lot of people love that shit too. So
and he's heading that new studio. Remember, he took over that support studio in LA, and they renamed themselves. I can't remember the name.
That sounds familiar, but I don't remember the details. I guess I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, I think we've been given reason to trust Vince. So I think that's I look at it as a positive, I suppose.
What do you think, Chris? Is there anything you can glean from this announcement, or is it just like cool, a new EA studio? Hopefully they don't close it in 5 years.
Pretty much. I mean, like at this point, without having anything more definitive, I mean, Vince is overseeing quite a bit of stuff. So this is just like one more thing under his umbrella currently.
Yeah, the first person focus isn't crazy, and the fact that maybe that's part of why they'll be reporting directly to Vince Zampella, because obviously he's like the first person guy at EA. So maybe it's like if he gives them the green light on stuff, it's like, well, Vince has had success with those type of games. Who knows? But the more things Vince Zampella is involved with, the better, in my opinion anyways, because anything he touches tends to be pretty good. When it's not a weird announcement of a Star Wars game title at E3 while he's sitting in this. Do you guys remember that? At E3 when they announced Jedi Fallen Order, and he was like, I love Vince Zampella. I think he was under the influence of some stuff, just vibing, having a good time, and they kind of, it seems like they dropped that on him of like, hey, what's the name of your game? And he's like, thinking like, oh, do I have the NDA clearance to say this? But yeah, I love Vince, so we'll see what happens there. And lastly, this is kind of like a loose conversation. I will start with you, Chris. What did you think of that Uncharted trailer?
I thought it was. I mean, to be polite, listen. It looked like somebody dressing up in costume, right? Playing Nathan Drake. The CGI, the green screen stuff was absolutely trash. Like, to me, it looked like worst Fast and the Furious trailer. Like, it was like really just over the top. That said, it's a trailer. So that's about all you could garner from it. Like, we'll find out a little bit more when the movie comes out, but it was not a great first impression, in my opinion.
I'm with you. I didn't expect this to be great, and obviously we'll see when it actually comes out. But I was surprised that it looked. I don't want to say low budget because it's obviously they're doing wild, crazy big set pieces, but something about it all just felt cheap still, and that's not really fair. But that's the only way I can describe it. It just felt like that. Like a 2 TV movie almost, where like they
like a
they
Disneyland version of Indiana Jones. Like,
yeah,
like you were on the route, like at the like Disneyland watching it versus, you know what I mean, like the adventure, whatever, the Indiana Jones adventure versus like the real movie.
Kind of like that, and then
where it's like too clean, it's like too polished. It's like there needs to be a little bit more grunge here. It all looks like fabricated.
And I think certain things don't translate well. So in the Uncharted games, there's a lot of like unrealistic jumping. Right? But it's more believable. Your suspense of disbelief is just greater in a video game, I think, especially those ones. But when they show Tom, like, jumping from, hanging from the plane, jumping from cargo crate to cargo crate, and then supposedly back into the hangar, it just defies physics in every way. You cannot jump upwards when you're... It would not work. Like, you know what I mean? And that felt just bad to me. And then Mark Wahlberg was just there, like, basically adding nothing at all, which was a bummer.
The shooting is going to be just as bad as the game. Like if they shoot like stormtroopers.
So we talked about this when the latest director was revealed, Dom, and I told you that like the moment Mark Wahlberg was attached to this, it kind of turned me off to the whole thing. I'm not a big Mark Wahlberg guy. I don't want to get into the entire thing, but like if you look into his past, it's unbelievable that guy is still be able to make millions as a Hollywood actor. Just do your own research and you'll understand where I'm coming from on that. He's a bad actor. I've always felt he's a terrible actor. As somebody who has no attachment to Uncharted, I've never played the games, right? I told you this in a message on Discord when we were talking about it. The movie looks like how the game trailers look to me. And I'm not saying from a quality perspective, because I agree with you guys. It does something about the cinematography and it looks like off for some reason. It looks very weird. But it reads to me like a Fast and Furious movie. It's just as ridiculous. It does all this stuff that you have to have this disbelief. And that's how the Uncharted games always look to me. If you actually look at the narrative of like the Uncharted games, they're very simple, right? And the reason people fall in love with those games is the characters, not necessarily the narrative of the games. And it's an action flick. And to me, it's like, oh yeah, this looks like an action flick. And like I said, I'm coming from a perspective, I have no investment in the series. So take my word with an absolute grain of salt. But it was like, yeah, this is what I expect from an Uncharted movie. I don't know what else people wanted. Maybe for Sully to have a mustache, that'd be great. As somebody who's not even attached to it, it's like, it's weird. I wonder if Mark Wahlberg is like, oh, it'd be great if at the end of the movie we reveal that I grew out my mustache. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. It's going to be a post-credit or mid-credit scene where he has a mustache. Now I can already call it, put money on it, go to Vegas. Yeah, it's whatever. I don't think this is going to be the video game movie that breaks the curse. In the meantime, if you want something based on a video game that's really good, go watch Castlevania on Netflix because they killed that. But yeah, maybe we'll just have to wait a little bit longer. And who knows, when this movie comes out, it could be just a dumb, fun blockbuster action flick. And as long as you go in with those expectations, you'll probably have a good time. But if you're expecting like Citizen Kane or like classic Indiana Jones, you're going to be sadly disappointed. And people should have known that when they couldn't find a director for years on this and everyone kept jumping ship. But it's neither here nor there. I want to get into real quick before we get into your guys' conversation on Far Cry 6. Some of my impressions on Psychonauts 2. I've talked about it for a couple of weeks now as I've been playing through it. And I also wanted to mention 2 games I'm playing during the interim before Guardians of the Galaxy comes out, because that's going to be the next game I'm diving into. So on Game Pass, I had 2 games marked that are actually leaving the service at the end of October that I wanted to get to. I started up Knights and Bikes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this game. It's an indie title published by Double Fine. It's an adventure game. I'm only about an hour in. It features the 2 main characters are these 2 young girls on this island, and the narrative beats of it are basically you end up finding out that the girl who lives on this island, her mom passed away for some unspecified reason, so she lives alone with her dad. So it's kind of unraveling that story. Really good stuff. It's only like a 5-hour game, so I'll definitely be able to finish in the next couple of days here, but having a good time with that. Hopped into it based on recommendations I saw from like Greg Miller of Kinda Funny and other people. And then the other one is a game that I've wanted to play since it came out, but you guys can probably see where I'm coming from on this. There's games, you see them and you're like, oh, that looks like a really fun game. I can't wait to play that when it goes on sale, right? And it's not that the game doesn't hold the value of it coming out at retail initially. It's just that it's a game that you're not as interested in to play right away, and you can wait for the sale and then enjoy it because it's something about the game. You don't have to be invested in the conversation or the zeitgeist of the moment. You can just put it off until later, right? That's Unruly Heroes for me. I don't know if you guys remember this game. It was initially revealed, and everyone was like, wow, that looks like Rayman Legends. Why does it look so much like Rayman Legends in terms of its art style? Came out that the development team was made up of a lot of people who worked on Rayman Legends over at Ubisoft. And it's basically a take on Journey to the West, if you're familiar with that old Chinese fable. Obviously, Goku from Dragon Ball Z is based on that. Enslaved Odyssey to the West, which is an underrated game from Hellblade developers. Oh man, the name's escaping me. Help me out.
Ninja Theory.
Ninja Theory. Yeah, so people have done their take on it. It's like Rayman Legends. If you loved Rayman Legends, which is a 2D platformer that mixes in musical elements and combo-based combat system, it's that. It's pretty. It's, not a whole lot there in terms of story. It's just a fun video game, which I'm sure we'll talk about with Far Cry 6 shortly. But yeah, so having a blast with those 2 games. Unruly Heroes, I think, is like 9 total hours. So there's 27 levels in it, and I'm through like 6 of them. So I think I should be able to finish it in time. I kind of want to beat both of these before Guardians comes out so I can have my full attention on that. The last thing was Psychonauts 2. So I recently finished that game. As I said previously, Dom, I thought it was going to be my game of the year so far. It still is. The art style just grew on. I mean, I loved it initially, but it grew on me even up until the final credits, where it's this beautiful blend of Tim Burton and Jim Henson, just mixed and mashed. And the first game was very much Tim Burton, and this one, when you enter the Mother Lobe, which is a hub base for the Psychonauts, you're introduced to all these other characters and people living in the world. And that's where the Jim Henson, Muppet vibes come in. It's very much that. If you look at any gameplay of it, when you get to this area and you meet these other people, you'll be like, oh yeah, this totally reminds me of like a Muppet mixed with a Tim Burton movie. And that's the whole aesthetic of the game. I love that. So the original Psychonauts came out in the early 2000s. And with a lot of those games, especially something like what Double Fine was making, they don't sit there and write out the entire lore for this series and then release it, right? It's like they make this game, they fill in the story holes, leave some mysteries for fun, and who knows if you'll ever get a sequel or not, but, they just are building the world as it's going. With this game, because of the financial backing of Microsoft and obviously all of their, I think it was either Kickstarter or Fig that initially invested in this game, they were able to go back and over the course of the last 15 plus years, what are the questions that fans have about this world, right? Let's answer those. Let's give some more information. Obviously, throw out some more breadcrumbs in terms of the mystery of it all, but kind of fill in those gaps for people. And the cool thing is you actually get a full understanding of what the Psychonauts are, the history of the Psychonauts, the founding members, what happened to them, some really cool story twists along the way. Once you finish the game, it does something that I commend any video game for, in that you can go back into the world and get the collectibles and do all the 100% challenges without having to worry about doing New Game Plus or something weird. It's very easy, very accessible in that way. There's checklists in the game for all the collectible stuff, which is super helpful. It's just like anything you'd want from somebody who's like, oh, I finished this game, I want to try to 100% it and get either the platinum if it was on PlayStation or get all the achievements. It totally goes out of its way to make that a fun experience. I'm currently going through that now. I love the game. As I told you, Dom, I don't think we've had a chance to talk about Psychonauts, Chris, but as I told you, Dom, you don't necessarily have to play the first game. Watch like a short YouTube video giving you a primer on what happened in that game and what exactly is going on. I would strongly suggest that anybody, even if you haven't played the first Psychonauts, play this game. It's just really fun. It's really funny, which I think is something we don't get a lot in video games. Like, generally, it's just a really funny game, and it's whimsical. I don't think we tend to get that. We're in a space where, unless it's an indie game, a lot of these higher quality, higher budget games tend to go for more serious tones. And this just has like a childlike whimsy about it, with the humor mix that it doesn't take itself too seriously. You're just in there to laugh, have fun, collect some things, have a story that is as wacky as you'd imagine it, but still makes sense. And the thing I want to mention the most about this game is the way it tackles mental health. I think it does a phenomenal job. So the first game, you learn about the Psychonauts going into the brains of people and figuring out what's going on. And it didn't really necessarily focus on mental health. It was just like, look at all this crazy stuff in people's minds, right? Their imagination's going wild. With this game, they specifically put an effort into talking about what somebody is going through and trying to figure out how they can solve that. And so not only are you going into these minds of these people and getting put into these crazy scenarios based on how their own mind functions and the problems they have with their life or their regrets, you kind of come to terms with how these people can move forward with their lives and fix their mental health. And it's, like I said, the game's funny, but it never necessarily pokes fun at somebody's mental state without there being like a core reason behind that leads to kindness or leads to understanding. And I appreciate that a lot, especially in the day and age now where we're still trying to get over the stigma of mental health in a lot of ways. For a game to tackle this and not to be so serious about it, but to be funny and show that there are ways to get past trauma. Because there's some traumatic stuff that happens in this game with people, either dying or being lost or just these heartbreaking scenarios. And it kind of shows you how somebody's mind can unfurl in a way where they were one person and then something happens and they become somebody entirely different than who you thought they were. And that isn't always necessarily their fault, right? because the mind is so weird in the way it handles trauma and coming to terms with that type of stuff. So, like I said, I think Psychonauts 2 is a must play. I hope this becomes a franchise for Double Fine. And if they don't want to, that's completely fine as well. But I think Psychonauts is something special. And I like that this wasn't just a sequel to a game that people always hoped there would be a sequel to. It built on the foundation of that first game and refined it and took the mental aspect of hopping into these people's minds and added a layer of heart to it that I don't think a lot of people anticipate it having. So,
yeah,
So
I'm about 10 hours into Psychonauts 2. I'd never played the first one. Really had a fun time. This is definitely a game I would never have purchased outside of having Game Pass. So the fact that it's on Game Pass is huge. And to your point, like there are laugh out loud moments. Like literally laugh out loud moments. Parts of his family are hysterical. So, and I definitely am going to go back to it. It's just that other things have grabbed my attention. Like kind of came up, Kena, Bridge of Spirits came up, and then Far Cry 6. So like there's just a bunch of things that came up. But it's one of those games where like in December, I have a feeling I'm going to end up coming back to it and finishing it out.
yeah, and it's one of those games too where when you come back, I don't think you're going to feel like stressed out about what's going on or anything like that. I think
Sure.
you'll be able to hop in and move on because the way the game's segmented too, where every quote unquote level is somebody else's mind you're going into, there are those points where you can like take a break, go do something else and come back. And I'm glad to hear you're enjoying it. What were you going to say, Dom?
Oh, so it sounds like it's definitely even above Death's Door as far as stuff from this year for you.
A slight edge on it. Honestly, and I just think it's because part of it is nostalgia because I did play the first game and Death's Door is the first in a series. And also I think the added level of them tackling mental health kind of gave it the edge for me. Not that every game needs to have like a core message like that, but they're both such excellent experiences. And the one thing that kind of gave it the edge was that. But yeah, Death's Door it's like a Sophie's Choice, man. Like I love those games so much. And I hope, upcoming Guardians of the Galaxy joins that conversation for me and other titles like Halo Infinite. But yeah, Psychonauts 2 is something special, and honestly, I had never gotten around to playing it, and I had told Dom when I initially started playing the first Psychonauts, Chris, that if I would have played this game in, I think, 2003, I think is when it came out, or 2004, whenever that was, it would have been one of those games that would have been on the top of my tongue in terms of whenever I converse with other people about video games, like, man, have you played Psychonauts? You need to play Psychonauts. It's one of my favorite games as a kid. Like, it would have been there for me as a foundation alongside Pokemon and other titles because it just clicked with me so much. Like it feels like a Saturday morning cartoon in the best of ways, and we don't get that type of thing anymore, really, in a meaningful way, at least for older people who, have that nostalgia towards that era. Obviously, they're still cartoons, but yeah, I absolutely loved it. It's so good. I
enjoyed the fact that they gave you like a 15-minute intro. Like they basically told you the entire story. Like it was like a movie. So it was that was really cool. It's like I don't have the time to go play Psychonauts. So like the fact that I got a 15-minute movie on what Psychonauts was perfect for me.
Yeah, and on top of that, for people who didn't play Rhombus of Ruin, which was the VR game, I didn't have a chance to play that. And that's basically a game that took place between Psychonauts and Psychonauts 2. They give you a primer on that as well, so you're caught up and good to go. Anybody with Game Pass, I suggest getting it. If you don't have Game Pass, in my opinion, if any of this sounds interesting to you, I would watch a review or some gameplay, and I think it's worth the money if it clicks with you. It's a great game. It's very unique in the market right now, and I'm glad that it paid off for Double Fine because now that they're under Microsoft's wing, I talked to you about this, Dom. You could tell that they now had the budget of Microsoft to be able to polish this stuff. Like Tim Schafer even came out and said, there's whole parts of this game that wouldn't have made it in if we weren't acquired by Microsoft, which is sad to think about, that there's parts of this game that wouldn't have made it to market because they're just an indie studio. And that's one of the benefits now of being under that corporate wing is being able to see your vision to fruition. And I wonder if, they say that there's stuff that wouldn't have made it in the final product now. If they would have started from the jump with a bigger budget, who knows what Psychonauts 2 would have been. But no matter what, it turned out to be a great experience. And I really hope there's one coming up next. And if Double Fine wants to do that, cool. But there's such creative people. Like, have either of you played the Costume Quest games?
No.
Those games are great too. Small, little fun adventure games. Obviously, they take place on Halloween. I'm hoping for like a Costume Quest 3 pretty soon. Double Fine is slowly growing into one of my favorite developers just because they offer products that are unlike anything else out there. So Psychonauts 2, a must play in my opinion, had a blast with it. But we're running out of time here. We have a hard cutout, so I wanted to get to you two talking about Far Cry 6. I obviously have no experience with it, so it's really up to you two what you guys want to talk about. Dom, I guess you could take the lead and talk to Chris about your guys' experiences with Ubisoft's latest entry in the series.
I mean, Giancarlo Esposito's there, so what more could you want? I guess I don't know. It's been good. So I've put a lot of time into it, even since last week's when we talked last year. But it's pretty large. So I think I'm somewhere around 15 or 18 hours, something like that. And I went through that entire first area, which is like one of three really, and it took a long time. And I was pretty thorough, but still, I was surprised at how much more there is still. And but I'll be curious to see if the other areas are varied, geographically, setting wise, they look exactly the same, because that might start to get a little bit samey, unless they also potentially add more types of things to do, which I don't expect that, because you're going through and capturing bases and doing these supply interception things, and capturing trucks, or the typical stuff. And there's fishing too. Actually, I tried some fishing. I was kind of into it, which I'm not usually into, the fishing mini games and these types of things. But for some reason, I really got into it. I had to upgrade my string strength because they kept breaking it. I was a weird thing. I normally don't get into that side stuff, but for some reason, the fishing randomly got me this time. But it's been fun still. Last week I talked a lot about the absurdity of the characters, and they go for a lot of comedy here too, because we were talking about Psychonauts 2 being really funny. And this is Far Cry has some moments where some characters do things that are just so over the top and say the silliest things that it makes you laugh, not necessarily because it's the funniest thing, but it's just so absurd that, there's this one guy, his name is Philly, and I don't know, he's really, everything is Philly magic, baby. And it was funny for a minute, and then it kind of wore off, but nonetheless, you end up flying a plane full of Agent Orange and dropping that on some tobacco fields. So that was kind of fun somehow, I guess. Sounds like a weird sentence to put together, but I guess that's what you do out here in Far Cry when you're not shooting CDs, actual CD discs at people, which is a thing you do in this one. So that's interesting too. It's just weird to say this stuff out loud.
If any of you follow Chris on Twitter at Topher Nunes, you know that he's not necessarily super hot on Far Cry 6 right now. Could you let us know how you're feeling with the game? You're kind of far through it, right, Chris?
I am. I'm a little over 20 hours through. And the funny part of it is I feel like I haven't accomplished anything. That's the honest to God's truth. I've dabbled in 4 different stories. So the place where it tells you to go into one area and go into the Montero area first, or Montego, I can't remember the name of it. Honestly, I can't remember it because the story is not that interesting. But you go there and I'm oh, okay. Then I hop into another mission, and then all of a sudden I was helping the old squad, or the elder squad, or the ancient ones, or whatever the hell they're called. So I hopped into that one. Then I hopped in with the Libertad, and I'm oh, okay, well, this is great. So I was dabbling in a little bit. I was maybe one of these stories will catch my attention. None of them actually did. So then I'm all right, well, now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go tackle the cousin that's the cousin of Giancarlo, which, by the way, 20 hours in, and I think I've seen him twice, maybe 3 times. It's very small, very short. I really loved Far Cry 5. The Joseph Seed stuff was absurd and crazy in the best way, and it hit at the right time. This game feels like it's wasting my time right now. It feels like it's just draining my life, and I'm looking at it thinking, I don't know if I have another 30 hours to put into this game, because that's probably what it's going to take for me to do it. I'm reviewing it currently, so I'm obviously going to keep pushing through, but it's it just feels like rinse, repeat, and I was looking for things that might be different in this. And I know Far Cry is more Far Cry, which it's fun. It's dumb fun, and you're shooting CDs. I'm shooting Supremos, which I now own all of the Supremos. I don't think there is another one that he can offer me unless there's a special one, and I even got the special one. So I have all of them, and I'm these are interesting, but not really. The mods are kind of fun a little bit, but I just feel like I'm collecting medicine that I don't know what it's for, and I'm collecting scraps that I don't know what it's for, and I modded a couple of the guns from the beginning, and I found that like they're the ones that I want to stick with, and I don't really want to like play with other stuff. So like I've gotten like those specialty weapons that are in like special cases, and then you find out that you can't mod them. So like you're stuck with whatever it is that they have, and I'm like, well, I actually really like the stuff I've modded on the gun, even if it's like a level 1 versus like a level 4. So, and also the planes and the helicopters are just like annoying, like to the point now where they've raised like the level and they're constantly chasing me. So I feel like I'm shooting missiles at things and I don't have a lot of missiles, because replenishing your weapons outside of the back of your car, which does it, but then there's a 30-minute time limit off the back of your car when you replenish your ammo. It's hard, I just don't have enough. So I'd be like, I'm caught in like these really big battles to like take over a place, and I'm out of ammo. Like I'm out of everything. So
we have a hard out, so I'd love to hear more about what you have. I guess real quick before we get to the closing of the show, Chris, if you had to give it a score or a determination right now, if you don't want to give it a score, what would you say in a 1 to 2 sentence way for Far Cry 6?
It's a lot of fun in the, like, you could literally put a podcast on and just run around because the story doesn't really mean much. So, like, if you put on your favorite show in the background and you're watching TV while you're playing the game, this is the perfect game to go do that. And it does give you a shit ton of stuff to do. Like, to Dom's point, like, you could spend hours and hours and hours in one area just grabbing all of the crap that it has. That said, if you're, like, interested in a main story that has, like, a really, like, detailed, interesting information, this is not it. It's to me, it's not telling a really good story. And the next person who says "merda" to me, I'm like, it's like literally every other word out there. It's like the word "the." It's like
I keep
that's
hearing
the one Spanish word that they could come up with. So that we're gonna say "merda" for everything, which is I hear it all the time. I was just playing it. I literally was just playing it like a half an hour, 45 minutes ago.
Coño. And I don't know what that means.
Coño.
I'm guessing it's a curse word. So maybe I shouldn't have said it, but
yeah,
they say that constantly.
So if people want to hear more about what you have to say about Far Cry 6 and, Guardians of the Galaxy and any other games you're playing, where can they follow you at, Chris?
They can follow me at Topher Nunes. I'm also doing write-ups at megadads.com.
Awesome. Thank you guys for listening. If you can, please go over to YouTube, search Controlled Interest, Part Bite Up, subscribe, hit the like notification if you enjoy the video, dislike it if you don't enjoy the podcast, which I don't know why you'd be listening if you don't enjoy it, but people do that. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of Far Cry 6 if you're playing it currently, or if you're excited for a game coming out the rest of the year. On Twitter, you can follow us at Jerrad Wyche. That's my full name, JerradWyche. You can follow Dom at ObDomKenobi. The O and OB is a 0 and not the letter O. Otherwise, you can listen on Spotify, iTunes, all the places you listen to podcasts. We're on Instagram at Controlled Interest if you want to get your updates there. Other than that, we'll catch you guys next time. Thank you guys for listening. Bye.